Hi friends, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. So today we are going to talk about other certain feature in AWS, which is a feature of EC2 service in AWS, which basically helps us to and extend and upscale and downscale the storage of EC2 instances, right? So here we have a topic called volumes, which is a block store volumes in AWS. So those volumes are basically to attach to the EC2 instance and detached from the EC2 instance, right? So we have a virtual machine service, which is EC2, which is created in AWS account, and you are going to deploy all your applications on top of your EC2 instance. But each application that you're going to run inside an EC2 instance needs a certain level of storage, right? So that storage is in different formats. So in AWS, we have storages, a lot of services when it comes to the storages, right? So we have databases, which is again one of the storage service that we have in AWS, and we have EBS volumes, and we have S3 buckets, S3 as a service, which is simple storage, and we have we have S3 Glacier. So we have a lot of storage services that are encrypted and inculcated in AWS account. So here, in terms of EC2 instance, so every server should have certain amount of volume, right? So there are some limitations when you are using free tier account. So you are allowed to use 30 GB of free volume in your AWS account, right? So by default, when you are creating a EC2 instance, it will have 8 GB as a default root volume. Okay, so what is root volume? So what is the difference between a root volume and a EBS volume? So first of all, let me tell you how many types of volumes we have in AWS account. So there are two types of volumes. So one is again root volume and the other one is EBS volume in AWS EC2 service. So root volume. So the volume which is allocated while launching EC2 instance, right? Launching the EC2 instance, right? So any additional volume that is attached to the root volume is called as EBS volume, which is additional to root volume. So this additional EBS volumes, we are going to attach manually to the EC2 instance, right? So here what I'm going to do is, let's take an EC2 instance in AWS account. So I'll show you while the time I was launching this EC2 instance, what is the amount of volume that AWS is offering us by default, and how can we increase, what is the limit that we have for a free tier account. I'm in my Mumbai region, so I'm going to EC2 service. So in this EC2 service, so I'm going to click on instances. So when I click on instances, it will show any instances which are running, stopped, and terminated, right? So launch instance, when you click on launch instance, it will ask you a proforma saying what is the image that is needed for you and what is the size of the instance, and which is T2 micro, which we are selecting as a free tier eligible, and we are selecting the key pair in this particular region. So we don't have any key pair. Let's create one. So what I'm going to give a name is EBS test, right? So that's fine. So we have created a PEM key. So the key got downloaded. So let's create a security group. So we'll talk about security groups later sessions. So for now, let me create a security group or use the existing. So I have my learning security group, which is created by me. Okay, so here you see this section which we have here. It is saying configure storage, right? So storage configuration is pretty important for every server. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. So what are the volume of the services that I'm going to run on my EC2 instance, and to what extent I need to increase the EC2 instance, right? So the volume by default, a root volume that is given by the instance is 8 GB when I'm selecting Ubuntu. It may differ for rest of the operating systems, but for Ubuntu, it is going to offer 8 GB of default storage. Okay, so let me add a new volume. So this is the root volume, which by default, it is going to create it, right? So here you can directly attach a volume from here by clicking on this add new volume button, and you see the difference, right? So root volume, which is by default, it was created by AWS, right? AWS will create a default volume for you when you are going to launch an instance, right? If you want to increase the size of the instance, I mean the volume of the instance, you can directly attach it here, or you can simply increase your existing root volume to, let's say from 8 to 15 GB, I'm going to increase, right? So, okay, so we have a root volume, which is 15 GB, and it is not an EBS volume. If you want to attach to EBS volume, go for add new volume, and you can create a new volume in parallel with AWS instance, right? So, but here there is a alert. Free tier eligible customers can get up to 30 GB of EBS general purpose magnetic storage, right? So, which is very important. So this is pretty important. You have to keep this in mind, right? So this is the root volume. If you want to attach another volume inside your EC2 instance, you have to click on add new volume button over here, right? Which is pretty important. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is, so let's say, for example, I'm going to create a root volume without creating any EBS volume, right? So I'm clicking on launch instance. So instance will be created for me. So let's open this instance, right? So here you will be able to see what are the configurations of the instance that we have. Of course, it is T2 micro, right? So if you want to see the storage of the instance, how much storage it was attached to, just select the instance, right? When you select the instance, here you will be having a lot of segments: security, networking, storage, status check, monitoring, and tags. We will discuss about all these things later. So now I'm going to talk about storage. Okay, so storage, which is having a root device name, so that means a logical volume that you have to create inside the EC2 server, right? When you create a logical volume, you can extend your existing storage. We'll talk about logical volumes later, but here you can see in the storage section, what is the root volume by default that is created when you create a EC2 instance, right? Yes, of course, this volume is enabled with delete on termination. Okay. Okay, this is how we can configure storage for an EC2 instance, right? So we have launched EC2 instance, and we have a root volume which is created with 8 GB, and we are going to use that. Okay, so what happens if I want to create a root volume and you need to attach the root volume after creating it manually to the EC2 instance? So let's see that. So if you go to the volume section in the EC2 plane, you have Elastic Block Store, which stands for EBS, right? So here you have volumes section. So just click on this volume section. So you can see what are the existing volumes inside your EC2 AWS account, right? So you have one volume, which is by default created. It is 8 GB. It's not an EBS volume, but still it is under volumes, and it is a root volume, right? So here, if you see, the state is in use, right? So keep that in mind. If you want to attach a volume to any other EC2 instance, it has to be in available state. Okay, so now the volume which you are seeing is in use, right? And it is attached to, it is used by this particular instance, right? It is again a hot link. And when you click on this instance ID, it will redirect you to the EC2 plane. And when you go back, you can go back to volume section again, and you can see this is the volume which is not encrypted, no KMS key, no multi-factor authentication. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I have 8 GB, which is GP2, generic purpose volume 2, and I'm going to create one more volume, and I'm going to attach to the instance, right? So for creating a volume and attaching that volume to the EC2 instance, there are two things that you need to keep that in mind, right? When your EC2 root volume, right? I mean, the EC2 instance that you have created and the volume that you are going to create it, both should be in same availability zone, right? So unless until you don't have those two volumes in same availability zone, you cannot attach it to the instance. Okay, so let's see that. So here I'm going to create a EBS volume in the availability zone where my EC2 instance is resided. So go to the EC2 instance section. Let's verify in which availability zone the EC2 instance was launched. Okay, so it was launched in AP South 1A availability zone, right? So let me create a volume in that particular availability zone. So for creating a volume, click on create volume, and you can select which type of volume you can use. We'll discuss about these different types of volume in coming videos. I mean, in the very next video. And here you can mention the size of the volume. Since I have a restriction to use 30 GB of a free memory, free volume, I'm going to reduce it to a 10 GB, right? So a 10 GB, but here there is a limit. Minimum you should specify 1 GB and maximum you can specify 16,384 gigabytes of volume. Okay, so here IOPS, this is how many input outputs per packets per second, and here the availability zone that you can select. So since my EC2 instance is in AP South -1A, so I'm going to create my EBS volume also in AP South 1A. So if you have a doubt, go to the EC2 management console and you can confirm the availability zone over here, and both look same, right? So here I'm going to click on encrypt this volume. So when you click on encrypt this volume, it is asking for a KMS key, right? So you can use a default EBS key, right? So you have this key, and you can mention a custom key which is created by other AWS. So for now, I'm going to deselect this encrypt volume, and you can mention tags which is required and used as a identifiers. So I'm going to name it as prod app volume, right? So I have declared a name like this, and you can create a one, right? So you see the configurations of this volume. So you have the name product volume, the volume ID, and it is the general purpose second version, and it is of 10 GB, and it is having 100 input output per second, and you have a particular, the time when it was created. You don't have any snapshot because you don't have created any snapshot for it, and it is still in creating state, right? So it has to be in available state if you want to attach this volume to any EC2 instance, right? Which is pretty important. So you have to keep that in mind always. If you want to attach a volume to any EC2 instance, it has to be in available state. Unless until your volume is not in available state, you cannot attach to any of the server, right? So which is pretty important. Okay, so that's fine. So we are going to attach this volume to the existing EC2 instance. So if you want to do that, select the volume that you want to attach and click on Actions. And here you can see a button called Attach Volume, right? When you click on it, it will ask you which instance you want to attach this volume to, right? So you can select the instance which is running in your account. You can give the device name, either it is SDC, SDV, or SDP, anything. But you have to make sure that this volume device name should be unique, right? So you can attach volume. Got it. So we have successfully attached a volume and volume ID to the instance. This is the instance ID. Okay. So this is a hot link. So we can directly go to the EC2 console from here, and you can check whether the root volumes and the EBS volumes for this particular instance was updated or not under the storage section. Got it. See here, we have two different volumes. One is of 8 GB and the other one is 10 GB, and the device name is SDF, and it was created just now. Okay, it is not encrypted with any KMS key, right? So if you want to enable encryption, you can go to the volume and you can click on modify volume. You have to select the volume over here and click on modify, right? You can change any one of these services. Okay, so this is how you can update a volume and you can attach to the EC2 instance. All right, thank you so much, guys. That's all for this video. In the coming videos, we are going to discuss about what are the different types of EC2 volumes, EBS volumes. See here, we have different types: general purpose 3, provision IOPS, and cold HDD, throughput optimized, magnetic standard, and general purpose SSD 2. So we will discuss these volumes types in very detailed manner. Stay tuned for the another video. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good day. Bye bye. Take care.